Remember the screech of dial up modems and the thrill of discovering a new online world? Welcome to today's episode, where we're taking a nostalgic journey back to the 1980s, the era of bulletin board systems, or BBSs. Prepare to be transported to a time when floppy disks ruled and the internet was just a dream. So, my friends, dust off your old joysticks, fire up your imagination, and get ready for a blast from the past as we relive the era that paved the way for the digital age. In the early 80s, I was a child of maybe 3 or 4 when I sat down at a home computer for the first time. Computers offered my first glimpse into a world of both creation and wonder, especially through video games. Titles like Burger Time or Choplifter, Zork, and Lode Runner. It was a world where magic would appear if you just knew the right words to enter into a program. No need for materials or a workshop or even worries about making mistakes and starting over. It was just raw, unbridled creativity at your command, right beneath your fingertips. Now, for whatever reason, computers and computer code have always made more sense to me than anything else I've discovered. They're orderly, non-emotional, logical pieces of hardware that also have kind of a soul to them. And I say this because many people I know do not get along well with computers or technology. They seem to wrestle or fight with technology, and they're often frustrated by the results. Whereas I can often walk up to these same situations, quickly diagnose a sense of wrongness, I suppose, from their frustration. I'll ask 1 or 2 clarifying questions and then immediately resolve the issue. Computers just seem to like me for some reason. We get along well, and my systems are often reliable and content. Having a computer at home was pretty rare for this period in time. Computers were relatively new. They were very expensive. And computer literacy was extremely low. They were just so new, right? It required a lot of tactical knowledge to operate and to even just launch software. For most of the 80s, I had an Apple IIe computer with its cool dual floppy diskette drives, which was great for copying floppy disks. Now, these 5.25-inch format disks held about 360 kilobytes of data, which at the time was a lot. These systems didn't have persistent storage. You turned on the computer, it booted up, it read the floppy that you had inserted, and data was only available while the computer was running, and you'd better save your work to disk, or else it's gone for future use. The Apple IIe had its own operating system called Apple DOS, or some people used Pro DOS, which was not compatible with MS-DOS, despite having a similar sounding name today. Now, I was obviously too young to buy things. I didn't have a credit card at 4, so sometimes new software would just kind of appear in the house, saved on a disk for me to load. I remember this being true for Choplifter. It was a space helicopter game where you had to extract survivors and destroy alien enemies. And we actually had a plug-in joystick at the time, which was very simple. It just had a little joystick and maybe 1 or 2 buttons. Other software came in the form of books, believe it or not. I remember this 1978 classic book entitled Basic Computer Games. And I think it had a picture of a human and a computer robot on the front. And it contained chapters where each chapter was source code for simple games called things like basketball or blackjack or bowling. And this was kind of a Bible of code that really just showed you what good looked like, or at least what good working code look like, and was largely sourced from the community going back to the early 70s, I think. Many kids have dreams about what they will be or do when they grow up. For me, I knew without a doubt that I wanted to be a technologist, writing code and working with computers. That was my dream at age 4, and here it is 40 years later, I still continue to chase it. As I grew older and learned more about computers, I started dealing with more complex stuff. I discovered bulletin board systems, or BBSs. Now, these were like a very early version of the internet, and that's a very loose explanation, where you could connect with others using a computer and a modem. And in this case, my early modems were actually picking up your phone, dialing a phone number into it, and then laying the phone onto a cradle, which would pick up the signals from your phone into the modem. Sometimes I would call a destination and a person would pick up and I would say, hey, I'm looking to call your server or your modem, and they would do the same thing on their side. Now, once we were connected, we could chat in an online forum or join a discussion or download or upload files like text documents and images and software and games. BBSs were a big part of how online culture started, and I think ultimately led to social networking and the file sharing platforms that we have today. I was very into BBSs. I even hosted my own briefly because I wanted to experience it. Nothing held my attention greater than a game called VGA Planets. It was a text-based game where you explored randomly generated universes, and you traded stuff, and you fought other players who were also connecting to the server and making their moves. And it was awesome. I loved connecting to a BBS and then getting lost into this world. In fact, there were limits to what you could do on an hourly or daily basis, so you would check in periodically to see how your game was evolving. I also got into a more advanced games and level editing as time progressed, for games like Doom and Jetpack. To me, these games were revolutionary, and I spent hundreds of hours playing them and figuring out what made them so cool. I was fascinated by level design and started messing around with existing levels and then altering them, ultimately making my own. This led to sharing my custom levels and my code with the community over the BBS and other early online forums, which was really exciting. It let me connect with other gamers who were just as passionate. It didn't matter that I was just some scrawny little kid in nowhere, North Carolina, with no one locally who understood my obsession with computers or games. I had a whole online community to be a part of, and it was really all about sharing and working together and learning. Now, besides playing games, I started making my own on 286 and 386 systems using programming languages like BASIC and C, and even dabbled a little bit in assembly. I loved the challenge of designing and coding my own games, and it was incredibly satisfying to see my creations come to life. Little things like snake games and chess and blackjack. I learned how to code by seeing what other people wrote and understanding how it worked, and then kind of reverse engineering the bits that I needed. Much of the code was pretty cryptic back then, especially assembly and a lot of C. So it meant going to the library to check out materials and using lab computers to connect to services like CompuServe. Additionally, I found a lot of joy playing multi-user dungeons, or MUDs. And it was another great method of learning, because many of them, such as Deku MUDs, allowed users to create their own characters and items and even areas within the game world. Learning to code for these games was a really fun way to get started with programming. BBSs were a hub for technical discussions and troubleshooting. I often engaged with these other users when encountering problems with my computer or my code. And I remember the exec PC BBS community had so many resources and people involved that it felt like an everlasting amount of content and interaction. I think these experiences made me even more passionate about technology and software development, and underlined that I really knew I wanted a career in this field and was very excited to see what the future would bring. My early experiences with computers and gaming weren't just a phase. They ignited a lifelong passion that has shaped my entire career. I think this journey underscores the importance of exposing young people to a wide range of fields and possibilities, being someone who opens the doors they might have never considered otherwise. It's a big part of why I prioritize teaching what I learn and trying to ignite that aha spark in others. My involvement in BBSs and the online community wasn't just about the technology. It was about the connections and the people. This experience showed me firsthand how technology can bridge distances and foster relationships and create a genuine sense of belonging among people who I would never have crossed paths with in the physical world. Now, sure, I do hold a formal education in technology. I have an undergrad in network and communications management, but I found that a lot of my practical knowledge stemmed from hands-on experimentation, self-guided learning with books, countless interactions with other people online. I think this blend of formal education but emphasized real-world experience highlights the diverse and multifaceted nature of learning and growth that exists in the technology sector. My dedication to learning and creating wasn't just a hobby. It ended up leading to a fulfilling and successful career in technology. And I hope that you see pursuing your passions can lead to more than just personal satisfaction. It can open doors to a rewarding professional life. I wasn't afraid to dive into programming and game design, even when I had no idea what I was doing, even when the challenges seemed extremely daunting. These experiences taught me the value of stepping outside your comfort zone, exploring new interests, even if they seem intimidating at first. I'd say never stop asking why and how. The tech and gaming worlds thrive on innovation. It's the fuel that drives everything, and curiosity is the engine for that fuel. Don't be afraid to tinker and experiment. Don't give up on your dreams, no matter how crazy they might seem. The world always needs more passionate people who are willing to push the boundaries of what's possible. And who knows, maybe it's you that will inspire the next generation of tech enthusiasts and innovators along the way. So there you have it, a journey back to the 80s and BBSs, a time of dial-up modems and text-based adventures, and really the birth of online communities. It was a time of exploration and innovation, camaraderie, LAN parties. It played a pivotal role in shaping the digital world we know today. If you are old enough to remember the BBS era, I hope this episode brought back some fond memories. And if not, if this is new to you, I hope this is a fascinating chapter in tech history that you're encouraged to check out. Look at some of those resources I've mentioned, learn more about it. Most importantly, I want to draw attention to the lessons. Never stop learning. Never stop exploring, and never stop chasing your dreams. And with that, I hope you've enjoyed this nostalgic episode of Thoughtfully Critical. Let's talk again soon. Peace and love.